Welcome to our media panel. Good morning to Bill Ralston, listener columnist, and media commentator Dr. Brian Edwards. Thank you both for coming in this morning. Let's begin first with a story that's proving to have quite a life of its own. Kim.com and our spy agencies. Who would have thought a German internet mogul would have such an impact on New Zealand politics? Here's Labour leader David Shearer on TV3's First Line this week.
Well, what we're saying is just what I've told you. What I've told you is that these hard drives were taken away and obviously searched or whatever, and now there appears no video is available.
Yes, the video that never was. We've talked about David Shearer's media performances on this panel before. Bill Ralston, if I can start with you. Goodness me, how do you think he's handled this?
Well, appallingly. I mean, apart from his delivery, which you saw in that clip there, with the stuttering, the stammering, you know, he had what he thought was a smoking gun. He should have been absolutely unequivocal. He should have been categorical. He should have gone hard, and instead he was backwards and forwards and flip-flopping. The reason is, he went out there with very little, if any, evidence to back him up. It appears that he had hearsay delivered to him by his press secretary's boyfriend's mate in the GCSB. I mean, that's not a thing to go to the public with at all. What do you reckon? And make allegations.
It does sort of query, really, the role of the press secretary in this, who should be advising him on, you know, what he's taking to the media.
Yes, but I'm not going to say anything more about David Shearer. My house is being stoned by the Labour Party people as it is. It'll be bombs next. So I'd really just leave that. But I agree with what he said. He said it, though. You get that? Right. Yeah. So now, actually, my interest in this whole thing at the moment is more towards John Key. And remarkable though it may seem, I'm starting to feel a degree of sympathy for him, for the attack that he's receiving right across the media. And the reason that I say this is I think to some extent he's inheriting the disdain that people had for John Banks. So we had John Banks, I think you've got to say, probably telling a whole lot of lies about what he could remember, what he couldn't remember. And now I think Key is being infected by that, in the sense that people are saying, oh, somebody else who can't remember, you know, somebody else who's got amnesia. Right. And it just seems to me that in a given day, a Prime Minister has so many contacts, talks to so many people, hears so many things, that he must be selective. None of us remember everything that happened to us in a given day, so I think it's possible, at least, that John Key is telling the truth.
Well, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think in media terms, it's amazing that David Shearer didn't realise that Kim.com is like fly paper. You touch him, you get stuck. And he should have just kept right out of it until he had concrete evidence. If he had the tape, if he had affidavits, he could have made the comments that he made. But instead, on the basis of very, very little, we have the leader of the Labour Party, the man who hopes to become a Prime Minister one day, coming into the public arena accusing not only the Prime Minister of lying and a cover-up, but also senior public servants in the GCSB. And what really worries me about the GCSB is because Key really gave him a public flogging over the Kim.com issue, they seem to be thinking it's fair enough to push back by leaking information. The damage that will do to our intelligence agency's reputation in the United States is considerable. The National Security Agency, the NSA, will be beginning to have real worries about the kind of Mickey Mouse intelligence service we have down here.
On the other hand, I don't think Key has handled this very well either. If you watch the interviews he's giving at the moment, the stand-ups, he looks defeated, actually. He's not striking back. And there's been a sort of a gotcha feel among the media about this. Some of the journalists who are reporting on this are positively gleeful that they finally got the Prime Minister as they see it. And Key is just sort of standing there. I watched Patrick Gower interviewing him during a stand-up the other day, and Gower's putting the same proposition to him again and again and again and again. Key should be taking a leaf out of the Australian Prime Minister's book. He should be saying, thanks, I've answered that enough, I'm off. You know, so that's a worry, I would have thought, for the National Party, because I think Key is losing his confidence at the moment, and that's a very bad thing for them.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that in those television interviews and in the radio interviews you hear, he doesn't have the same levels of confidence that he once had. Exactly the same problem with Shearer. Shearer does not look and sound confident. No one's going to vote for the leader of a political party who appears to be worried about.
Well, I think I said this last week, but the thing about Shearer, of course, is he has had no apprenticeship in politics. He's a new boy to all intents and purposes.
They'll start stoning your house again.
well, it's a fact. I mean, I'm making an apology for him, if you like, or an excuse for him, if you like. You look at Helen Clark's career. long apprenticeship. And I think if you look at the history of politics in New Zealand, people who come in very quickly burn out very quickly as well.
Okay.
You could argue that about John Key, who had a similar lack of background in politics.
True, yes.
And it showed him, for example, in what you were saying there, that he couldn't disengage from Paddy Gower. Paddy Gower's a hard man to get away from at the best of times, but you know, an accomplished politician should be able to do that.
Should be able to walk away. OK, let's move on to the All Blacks who can't walk away from their new jersey. It's got AIG, the insurance company, across the front of it. Bill, this has got a lot of people talking about this, surprisingly, on top.
I would have expected lynch mobs in the street, you know, public outrage. Online, there's a lot of it. It's probably running 2/3 against the logo on the front of the jersey. In comments on radio, yeah, again, at least 2/3 anti. But the media coverage itself has been surprisingly sympathetic to the rugby union's position here, because they've acknowledged that this is a severe amount of money coming into the rugby union. You know, we're talking tens of millions of dollars that rugby needs.
And you've got to keep that, need that to keep grassroots going.
Well, you know my view on rugby. The worst thing that happened to sport was the day that boy at rugby school picked up the ball and ran with it. He should have been put in detention for the rest of his school years. But, OK, so I'm not really interested in this. But having said that, this is not new. I mean, the sign is quite big and it's very prominent. But remember, of course, that Steinlager for many years were on the jersey, but theirs was quite a small sort of red sort of beer. Well, it's beer. That's interesting, isn't it? Which is more respectable, insurance companies or beer? At the moment, I think probably beer is more respectable. Yes. And there's a lovely cartoon of Emerson's where there's some people in Canterbury saying, goodness me, at last someone's got something from an insurance company.
Absolutely. OK, let's talk about the speculation in the Herald that Sunday, TVNZ's weekly current affairs show, might be about to potentially be cut or reduced to 30 minutes.
Well, that would fit the general pattern of the network executives in New Zealand wanting to move away from current affairs programmes, wanting to move away from long interviews, wanting to move away from programmes like this or programmes like Q&A. So that is not really surprising. It's a great pity. It's also a pity that Sunday is going to be reduced to half for a game show. Of all things, come on, you know, what standards have we got?
It rates, though, doesn't it?
And they say it'll come back. You probably know more about this than me.
Well, I mean, you're right. What the management is doing is actually shying away from current affairs because it attracts the wrong kind of audience. An older audience. Well, an older audience that advertising agencies...
fridges and things, do
That's
they?
right. Yeah. So they want younger, hipper, cooler, groovier people watching, and they don't watch current affairs.
Yeah, but I mean, there's an extraordinary thing here. I've never been able to work out why the advertisers apparently don't want people of your age, perhaps not quite of my age, because they apparently believe we don't buy anything.
Well, what do you buy?
No,
we buy lots.
What the agencies believe is that we don't change our brands. We're back up by this exalted age of ours, that you've become so brand loyal you can't be changed, which is completely ridiculous.
Your arteries have hardened.
Yes. Yeah. No, so, you know, they want younger people because they're more impressionable.
And the likes of 60 Minutes as well. These are incredibly expensive programmes to make, aren't they?
Sunday would be, what, $3 or $4 million a year to make, easily. And I would have thought 60 Minutes...
See, now, the Ridges would cost a lot less than that.
Oh, what? Oh, that is awful. How can anyone watch that? That is terrible.
The inequality of making television,
absolute television crap.
I have noticed the audience
really
declining rapidly on the Ridges. So,
I mean, anyone who watched the Kardashians would know that's the sort of programme you're going to get. What else are you going to get? It's awful.
Game shows are big.
It's hard, though. I cannot see TVNZ pulling those Sunday. When you look at the fact that the close-up's changing to sort of this infotainment format, surely they couldn't possibly lose Sunday as well.
Absolutely. I mean, they could, because simply the charter has been taken away. They have no moral obligation to run a current affairs program of any kind.
Not entirely their fault, is it? I mean, this is the brief they've got from the government. You have to make money, you have to make profits, you have to return a dividend. So it's not entirely their fault. Incidentally, I disagree with you about Close-Up. I think Close-Up had to go. I think it had been an embarrassment for several years.
It was tired. There's no doubt about that, but you could rejuvenate it, I would have thought.
And we have to leave it there. These are interesting times in current affairs, gentlemen. Thank you both, Bill Ralston and Brian Edwards.